Hi, I'm Brenna, and I was just trying to pay for my mom's medical treatment when my dad gave my credit card to my sister for a 3-day spa vacation. They told me she needed rest. They told me I was overreacting. Then she sent me a message. Fix the card, I need to book another tour. So I froze the card. And when they blamed me, I sold the house. What do you do when the people who raised you rewrite loyalty as silence and expect you to keep paying for it? The message came at 8:07 p.m., right as I was rinsing out my coffee cup. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles deep into the drywall, and I remember the way the hum of the fridge seemed louder than usual. I glanced at my phone expecting a work ping. It was from my dad, Clive. A video. In it, Mom was coughing gently, leaning on the counter, her figure backlit by our dim kitchen lamp. Her sweater sleeves were rolled halfway up her arms, and there was a kettle steaming in the background. She looked tired. He'd written, "Doctor says we should act fast. We need help with the bills. She doesn't want to worry you." No panic, no urgency, just a tone that felt rehearsed, like he'd said it before. I didn't hesitate. That's the part that still gets to me. I didn't ask a single follow-up question. I transferred $40,000 from my card. Quietly. No drama. Because that's who I was in the family. The one who stepped in, not the one who stepped back. I've always believed emergencies whisper before they scream. But this whisper had a script. 3 nights later, I was cleaning out old flagged emails, trying to sort through the mess of life admin clutter that piles up when you don't sleep well. And there it was, an email from Dad dated 10 months ago. Same subject, same video, same cough, same light, same sweater. Only the timestamp was wrong. Last year. My hand stopped on the mouse. My stomach didn't drop. That's the thing. It was too quiet in me. That's when I knew something had shifted. Either he forgot he'd used it, or he knew exactly what he was doing and thought I wouldn't catch it. I called him the next morning, as casual as I could manage, asked how Mom was doing. He told me she was resting more now, said, "She didn't want to burden you." Then, like it was nothing, he added, "Zinnia's staying over to help cook." Zinnia. Even her name made me taste metal. She was always just visiting, always just between things, never with a plan, never without a need. And Dad, he always acted like she was sunshine after a storm, when she was the storm itself. But it wasn't her name that bothered me. It was what he didn't say. It was the silence that built a wall between his words. Later that night, I got a notification on my phone. Zinnia tagged me in a photo. I didn't even think before clicking. There she was. Legs crossed on a balcony in Maui, tropical drink in one hand, her face glowing with that curated peace only influencers and people with no rent ever managed to have. She was wearing the burgundy coat I gave her last Christmas, the one she called too plain. Back then, she opened the box and gave me that tight smile, like she was accepting charity. Now she was flaunting it like it was designer. The caption read, "Nothing like island peace. One self-care Shaksh deserved." I stared at the image longer than I should have. That coat, that tone, that backdrop. It wasn't just a trip, it was a performance. And I was funding the props. I tapped through the rest of her story. Private yoga, champagne brunch, a $400 massage. Not a single mention of our mother's condition. No mention of stress, no hint of anything urgent. Mom was supposedly sick. Dad said it was urgent. But Zinnia? She was getting her chakras aligned and posting gratitude quotes. I put the phone down, walked into my kitchen, sat at the table, pulled up my budgeting app. Alani Resort Spa. $14,700. Booked under my card. She didn't just use my name. She walked into a world I paid for and posed like it was hers. I didn't cry, didn't rage. I opened my notes app, typed 2 words, medical lie. Then I opened that video again. Pressed play, slowed it down, looked beyond my mother's figure. There, hanging behind her, was last year's calendar, November, still up in spring. How fitting. They didn't lie because they were desperate. They lied because they knew I wouldn't fight. They knew I'd keep the ship afloat, no matter how many holes they drilled beneath me. I thought I was paying to keep Mom alive. Turns out, I was funding someone's Instagram vacation. The ding from my phone at 6:17 a.m. pulled me out of that gray space between sleep and obligation. I was still lying in bed, half draped in a throw blanket, when the screen lit up with a voicemail from Zinnia. No text, no context. I sat up, pressed play. "Fix the card, I need to book another tour." That was it. No, "good morning." No, "how's work?" Not even a weak, "hey." Just a clipped order, like she was reminding me to restock the fridge. Like I was the concierge of her 5-star lifestyle. I didn't respond. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling like it had answers. Then I opened the voicemail again, this time recording the screen. Not because I didn't believe it happened, but because I needed evidence. That was the first moment I realized. I needed to stop trusting memory. I needed receipts. The card company's hotline was already saved in my contacts. I called, gave my verification, listened to the hold music hum in the background like it had no idea the world was falling apart. When the rep picked up, I asked if there were any recent charges. "Yes," she replied. "There are several pending transactions from a travel service, Island Getaways Inc. Would you like to review them?" I didn't ask how much. I didn't want to know. "I'd like to freeze the card, permanently." I could hear the hesitation on the other end, like she wasn't sure if I meant it. "I understand," she finally said. "We'll take care of it." The silence in my bedroom felt different after that. Not peaceful, not empowering, just clean. Like someone had finally wiped the slate, even if it left behind scars. At 8:03 a.m., the group chat buzzed. Family bubbles. Zinnia had posted, "Looks like the card's not working. Weird. Can someone fix it, please?" 10 minutes later, Clive chimed in. "Brenna, could you check? It was working fine earlier." No one asked why she had access to it in the first place. No one said thanks for all the months I had quietly paid the bills they pretended to juggle. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the thread. I left it on read, not because I was petty, but because I had finally realized something vital. Silence only feels rude when the person losing control isn't used to not being heard. That afternoon, I opened the chat to scroll. Curiosity or punishment? I don't know. Under my profile photo, someone had changed my name to Finance HQ. A bank emoji followed. Zinnia replied with a laughing emoji. Marjorie added, "So true, our little helper." Helper, not daughter, not sister, not partner in care, just helper. I closed the app without reacting, but inside, something sharp lodged beneath my ribcage. It didn't bleed. It didn't roar. It just sat there, heavy and unmoving. Later, I remembered something from college, senior year, advanced communication class. We had a big group project. I wrote the entire report, researched, cited, edited. But during the final presentation, another girl stood in front of the room and spoke every word like she had carved them herself. The professor smiled at her, then looked at me and said, "You're the reliable one, not the face." Back then, I had nodded, grateful somehow to be labeled dependable. Now I saw the truth. That wasn't a compliment. That was a warning. Around 9:12 p.m., another message popped in. Zinnia again. "I really need to finalize the yoga excursion. Can we please hurry up?" Still no acknowledgement. Still no pause. And no one, neither mom nor dad, stepped in to say anything. Not a single sentence to suggest they saw me as more than a debit card with a pulse. I didn't answer. I didn't vent. I opened my laptop, pulled up a fresh spreadsheet, and titled it, "What They Owe." No, it wasn't about money. Not really. It was time. Emotional labor, birthdays spent cleaning up after their messes, apologies that never came, calls I always made first. Line by line, I listed it all. When someone names you the family bank, don't be surprised when they forget you're human. The numbers on that spreadsheet didn't look like finances. They looked like years I'd loaned out without interest. And the deeper I went, the more I realized the currency wasn't just money. It was patience, self-restraint, silence. I closed the laptop around midnight, then sat for a while at the edge of my bed, watching the stillness of my room like it might whisper back some sense. By morning, the weight hadn't lifted. I moved around the kitchen slower than usual. The mug I reached for still had traces of yesterday's coffee. I rinsed it out, poured a fresh cup, and tried not to look at my phone. Just once, I wanted a quiet morning without an electronic tug at my sense of self. Instead, I opened the drawer under the counter, the one that held things no one remembered: old can openers, batteries, and my grandmother's recipe book. It was leather-bound, faded along the spine, and filled with her precise cursive. As I flipped through it, looking for nothing in particular, a small slip of paper fluttered out and landed on the floor. I picked it up. Her handwriting was unmistakable. Never let them spend your heart like spare change. The ache that line caused wasn't new. It had just been dormant. Inez, my grandmother, had never been loud, but she was the only one who had ever looked me in the eye when I wasn't useful. I stood at the stove, the note pressed between my fingers, and a memory bubbled up like an unwanted burn. I was 11, maybe 12, and Zinnia had just thrown a tantrum because her bracelet broke. She screamed loud enough to send cousins scattering. I'd tried to fix it for her. My fingers clumsy with the wire, she pushed me away. I remember sitting on the back porch steps later, hot-faced and embarrassed. Inez had sat next to me, handed me a glass of lemonade, and whispered, "When someone takes more than they give, they're not sharing, they're stealing softly." Back then, I didn't understand. I thought she meant Zinnia was spoiled. I didn't realize she meant all of them. Around 9:45 that same morning, my phone rang. It was Mom. I answered because a part of me still believed she might say something different this time. She didn't. "Zinnia's been overwhelmed lately," she began, soft and measured, like she was giving a weather report. "The trip was supposed to help. She's had so much pressure, you know." Pressure. The word almost made me laugh. "She's always been sensitive," Mom continued, "and she didn't mean anything by it. But would you consider unfreezing the card? Just for this weekend? It might help her settle." I didn't reply immediately. I let her words linger in the air like a perfume I didn't ask to wear. I looked down at the slip of paper still in my hand. Inez's writing, still bold, still true. "Never let them spend your heart like spare change." I finally spoke. "So there was no surgery?" Silence. Mom cleared her throat. "Well, not surgery in the literal sense. Emotional stress," the therapist said. "The kind of stress that can be just as dangerous. Brenna, you've always been the practical one, but..." "So there was no procedure scheduled, no doctor, no hospital." She sighed. "I thought if I told you it was for Zinnia, you'd say no." I nodded slowly, not that she could see me. "You're probably right." I thanked her for the call, wished her a good day, and hung up before she could sweeten the insult further. There wasn't rage inside me, not even hurt anymore. What I felt was clean. Cold, perhaps, but steady. The kind of clarity that doesn't shake. It sharpens. I opened my laptop again, typed Oregon real estate attorneys into the search bar. Not for a lawsuit, not yet, but because every system has pressure points. And I had finally found mine. There's no panic in clarity, only decisions. Before I closed the laptop, I reached for a tack and pinned Inez's note on the board above my desk. It sat crooked between old appointment cards and a coupon I never used, but it didn't need to be centered. It just needed to stay. They weren't hiding the truth. They just renamed it until I stopped recognizing the lies. It was Monday afternoon, the kind where the sky hovers somewhere between gray and judgment. I was sitting on the porch, letting the condensation on my iced coffee trace lazy rivers down the glass, when my phone lit up with Dad's name. I stared at the screen for a few seconds. I hadn't heard from him directly in over a week. Not since the card froze and the group chat went silent on me. Against my better judgment, I answered. His voice was unusually pleasant, like someone who had rehearsed being unbothered. "Hey, kiddo," he said. "Just checking in." We exchanged a few lines. Weather, work, things that didn't matter. Then, like he'd been waiting for the pause, he said it. "You've always been a little jealous of Zinnia, haven't you?" I didn't flinch. I didn't ask him to repeat it. I just looked out at the maple tree across the street and let the words hang there. "She's always been freer," he continued, like he was offering analysis, not an insult. "You've always been more structured. That's why you don't understand her choices. You get caught up in rules." I took a slow breath through my nose. "Structured people pay for freedom, I guess," I said. "And sometimes for everything else, too." There was silence, then a shift in his tone. Something clipped. "Don't take it the wrong way, Brenna. We're just different." That was the point, wasn't it? I ended the call politely, said I had a work meeting, then sat there, letting my fingers tighten around the armrest until the wood creaked beneath my palm. I wasn't angry in the usual way. I was aware. Like a fog I hadn't known was there had finally lifted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my Instagram, something I rarely did anymore, and there it was. A message request from a name I didn't expect. Damon, Zinnia's ex. "Hey," it started. "Hope it's okay I'm reaching out. Saw your last post. Thought you should know. Zinnia used to brag you'd never say no, especially with money. Said you were dependable like a vending machine." Attached was a screenshot from an old group chat. There she was, clear as daylight. "She won't even ask questions. That's her thing. You push B3 and she hands over the weekend." My stomach didn't drop. My hands didn't shake. I felt nothing. And then everything. I didn't reply. I didn't type a single word. I just downloaded the screenshot and saved it to a new folder on my desktop. I named it. They said it themselves. I sat in that stillness, letting the echoes roll in. All those times I'd caught her sneaking into my closet, into my bank account, into conversations with people I'd introduced her to, and I let it slide. I told myself she was lost, overwhelmed, misunderstood. No, she was practiced. A memory surfaced like a splinter. Zinnia at 13, stealing $20 from Mom's purse. I told her to stop. She dared me to say something. I did. Mom called me spiteful and said, "She's under stress. Why would you make it worse?" That script never changed. I just stopped reading the lines. I reached for a pen and my old leather-bound journal, the one I hadn't touched since Inez died. I started writing, not paragraphs, not reflections, just facts, dates, quotes, screenshots, receipts. Who said what? When? How many times I covered rent? Who I bailed out? What I gave up? I wasn't building a case out of bitterness. I was building it out of order. If no one else was going to remember the truth, I'd document it. One fact at a time. By Tuesday evening, I was staring at numbers that should have made me shake. They didn't. They just confirmed what my gut had already decided days ago. The itemized bill from the Alani Royal Haven Resort had finally populated on my credit card app. $14,700 for a suite. $3,800 for spa treatments. $2,000 for champagne and catering. And right there, under one of the charges, Zinnia Wilson, guest of Brenna Wilson. She didn't steal. She signed her name, clean, elegant cursive, like it belonged beside mine. Like this was something we agreed on. Like I had nodded and said, "Sure, go relax on a beach I'll never see." I clicked the resort's contact page and dialed. A woman answered with too much cheer. "Alani Royal Haven, thank you for calling. How can I help you?" I kept my tone flat. "I'm calling to confirm a recent stay on a card I own. Can you pull the guest details?" After some back and forth, she read out the name, the room type, the package. Oceanfront Presidential Suite, includes private chef dinner, couples spa experience, and rooftop yoga. And the guest said she was, I asked, already knowing the answer. Ms. Zinnia Wilson. She said the trip was a gift from her sister. Of course she did. Please note this transaction as unauthorized. and forward all receipts, correspondence, and, if possible, video footage of check-in directly to my attorney, I said. There was a pause, then a polite, "Certainly." I hung up. That was the moment the line between forgiveness and boundary became a wall. Later that evening, around 7, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I saw Mom through the side window, holding a Tupperware of banana bread like it was a peace treaty. I opened the door. She smiled like nothing had shattered. "I thought you might like a little treat," she said, stepping inside before I could decide. "Fresh from the oven. Zinnia helped with the cinnamon." I let her in. I let her talk. I offered tea. We sat at the table, the banana bread untouched between us. She shifted her purse from shoulder to floor, then onto the table. That's when a slip of paper slid out from the side pocket. I saw the receipt the moment it hit the wood, white with red ink. The restaurant's logo I knew well. High-end, candlelit, full of happy anniversary tables and first dates. Won $200 for dinner. Dated last Saturday. On the back, in Zinnia's handwriting. "Thanks, Jess." I picked it up without a word. Mom chuckled lightly, awkwardly. "Oh, Zinnia wanted to make it look like it came from you. She thought it would be cute. You're always so generous." "That's not generosity, Mom," I said, not raising my voice. "That's identity theft with a smile." She blinked, then gave the kind of half-laugh people give when they know they've said something ugly, but hope you'll let it slide. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why she thought that was acceptable. I folded the receipt in half, slipped it under my planner, and waited for her to leave. After she did, I photocopied it, tucked it into a folder I had labeled earlier that day. Patterns of proof. That night, I sat at my desk with only one light on. I logged into my online banking, navigated to the automatic payments section, and canceled every monthly transfer going to the house in Eugene. Water, electricity, internet. No warning, just a full stop. Then I opened Dropbox, removed my family's shared access to all our old tax documents, health records, and joint accounts. I didn't delete them. I just took back the keys. Last thing I did was tap open the Family Bubbles group chat. I didn't send a message. I just hit leave conversation. Then I opened Instagram, created a story, selected close friends, just one name on that list. Zinnia. I posted a quote that said, "Givers have to set limits because takers rarely do." No caption, no emoji, just silence. Some things don't require revenge, just receipts and a resignation from the role they cast you in. I didn't go to bed angry that night. I went to bed done. There's a difference. Anger hopes. Being done doesn't. Morning arrived like a slow, weightless thud. I made coffee out of habit, not taste. The cup warmed my hands, but nothing reached my chest. I opened my email, scrolling past ads and junk. Then I saw it. Subject: Credit Safe Alert. New inquiry under your name. I clicked. A $28,000 loan. Approved 3 months ago. Listed under my full legal name and current address. Lender: a niche personal finance company I'd never heard of. The borrower: Zinnia, my sister, using my address, my credentials, my history. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd borrowed my existence, with the confidence of people who knew I wouldn't cause a scene. I called the lender, keeping my tone even, professional. When the rep picked up, I verified my identity, then asked her to walk me through the application. "Huck, I'm seeing a digital signature," she said. "It matches an older document on file, possibly from school records?" I paused. "What documents exactly?" She continued. "A scanned utility bill to verify the address. Same address as yours. The IP address used traces back to a residential account in Eugene." "My parents' house." I asked her to send everything to my email. I told her the signature was fraudulent. She said someone from the fraud department would be in touch. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall. There was no screaming, no pacing, just quiet. The kind that solidifies into resolve. I opened my phone and forwarded the documents to Alaric, my attorney. Subject line: New entry, Zinnia loan fraud. His response came under 15 minutes. This qualifies as identity theft. We can press charges or use this as leverage in civil negotiations. Your call. I replied with 2 words: prepare both. By evening, I moved from reaction to redirection. It was time. I logged into the utility accounts for the Eugene house, bills I'd been silently covering for years. I had told myself it was to help Mom, but helping had become hiding, enabling even. I clicked into each one: electric, gas, internet, water, and canceled the autopay. I removed my card, deleted my billing info. No one would notice, until they noticed. Then I opened the Dropbox folder where I kept all the family's shared tax documents, health insurance files, and scanned IDs. I changed the permissions, revoked their access. Nothing malicious, just separation. The digital kind that marks a shift deeper than a locked door. That night, I sat at my dining table, surrounded by silence and papers. I opened my journal again, the one I'd started filling with facts. But this time, I reached for folders. One by one, I labeled them: identity, financial abuse, verbal manipulation, legal prep. Then I printed everything: credit report screenshots, receipts, emails, texts, every proof of theft dressed up as family loyalty. I didn't do it for court, I did it for me. Because sometimes survival isn't loud, it's organized. I paused halfway through, looked down at the page I was about to hole punch, the fraud form, and I wrote a note in the corner: you can't burn down the bridge and ask me to carry you across the river. Then I sat back. I didn't check messages, I didn't scroll, I didn't wait for anyone to notice my absence. They would. I didn't tell them the bridge was gone. I let them try to cross it first, and feel the fall. Thursday morning arrived like nothing had happened. Sunlight over my kitchen sink, the hum of the fridge, the usual weightlessness of a day that didn't demand too much. Until it did. My phone buzzed at exactly 8:09 a.m. Voicemail: Zinnia. Hey, I heard the water got shut off. Did you forget the payment? Anyway, no biggie, let's talk soon. No tension in her voice. No shame. Just that soft lilt she used when she was about to ask for more. It was cheerful entitlement, wrapped in that breezy tone she wore like perfume. There's something chilling about a thief who still expects hospitality. I played the message twice, once to confirm the words, and once to confirm my response: silence. Later that day, a text arrived from Mom. Zinnia wants to apologize. She's really emotional right now. I didn't respond. 30 minutes later, Zinnia called. Her voice was delicate, scripted. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said slowly, like reciting from a cue card. Maybe I messed up, but you've always been the strong one. I admire that. Admire? That word didn't land. It bounced off something inside me that no longer needed her recognition. While she was mid-sentence, another notification slid down the top of my screen. Unknown number, no name. They're rehearsing. I heard Zinnia and your mom go over lines. Say sorry, she'll melt. Just a heads up. I stared at the message, then back at the call still in progress. Zinnia was saying something about healing the bond. I said one sentence. You're not apologizing, you're performing. Then I ended the call. No yelling, no tears. Just the kind of click that carries weight when there's nothing left to clarify. An hour passed. I made myself tea, answered 2 work emails, tried to distract myself with a spreadsheet until another email popped up. From Alaric. Subject line: new filing, address fraud confirmed. He attached the documentation. Car loan application. Cosigner, my name. Listed address, mine. Dealership, Sunset Auto Leasing. Application date, 1 week before the Hawaii trip. Same IP address as the fraudulent loan. This time, I didn't hesitate. I replied, send cease and desist, official notarization, add it to the file. It wasn't just identity theft anymore. It was boundary obliteration. They counted on my silence for so long, they assumed it was consent. I spent the afternoon in motion. No announcements, no social media quotes. I didn't even lock the door when I left. I just needed air and action. By 3 p.m., I was sitting across from the lawyer who'd helped us close on the Eugene house years ago. His office smelled of old coffee and printer paper, and nothing had changed on the walls since the last time I was there. I laid down 2 folders, one labeled, Liabilities Created, the other, Assets Owned. He raised an eyebrow, opened the first one. Do I want to ask what's in here? Proof and pressure points. He nodded, more curious than alarmed. And the goal? I don't want to ruin anyone, I said, voice level. But I want my name back. I want it out of their mouths, off their papers, and off their wish list. He leaned back in his chair. Then we start with leverage, quiet, documented, effective. I shook his hand, feeling more steady than I had in weeks. Alaric called as I walked out. They'll push back, he said. They'll call it betrayal. They already did, I replied. Now I'm just writing it down. By the time I got back home, the sky had shifted, blue edged with orange, that soft hush of dusk. I pulled out my journal again, added a new entry. I don't want to ruin anyone, but I do want my name to stop being a currency in this family. Alaric had said, then let's close the bank. And so I did. I gave them 4 days, not to move out, but to wake up. Only one of us did. Friday morning began with a silence I didn't break. I didn't need to. Everything that needed saying had already been documented, signed, and sealed. Literally. I pulled into the driveway of my parents' house at 7:45 a.m. sharp. The street was quiet, the same sleepy suburban hum that had wrapped this place in illusions for years. But I wasn't here for sentiment. I stepped out of the car, holding a manila envelope. Inside, a copy of the house deed in my name, a notarized 4-day notice to vacate, and a printed breakdown of every mortgage, tax, and repair payment I had made over the past 6 years. Not accusations, just facts. I didn't knock. I didn't ring the bell. I just placed the envelope on the porch, dead center on the welcome mat. Then I turned and walked back to my car, closed the door with care, and drove away. The truth doesn't need ceremony, just delivery. That evening, my phone rang. Clive. I let it buzz twice before answering. His voice was tight, careful. What is this about, Brenna? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the fading light. It's not about anything, I said. It's about everything. And it's legal. You're breaking your mother's heart, he shot back. She broke mine years ago, I said evenly. This isn't revenge, it's just delivery. He hung up. No goodbye. Just static and a beep. Saturday came with gray clouds and a knock on my door I didn't expect. Zinnia stood there, eyeliner barely holding, shoulders pulled up like armor. We can talk this through, she said, voice brittle but forced into a smile. You're not really going to sell the house, right? I handed her a copy of the real estate agreement, highlighted in yellow. Closing scheduled for Monday, keys required by noon. She stared at it like it was written in another language. That's not fair, she muttered. You didn't even give us a chance. You had years of chances, I said. This is me giving myself one. She didn't reply, just stood there for a moment, then walked away without looking back. Sunday morning, I returned to the Eugene house, not alone. The locksmith was already there, waiting. He nodded and got to work while I sat in my car across the street. By the time the locks had been changed, the show had begun. Zinnia was first to arrive, trying her old key and realizing quickly it didn't fit. Clive came next, yelling before he even reached the porch. You can't do this. This is your mother's home. Marjorie didn't speak. She just stood at the curb, arms folded, staring at the house like she'd never seen it before. I stepped out of my car, walked over calmly with a second envelope in hand. This house is mine, I said clearly. I paid for it. You lived in it. That ends now. I handed Clive the legal paperwork. He didn't take it at first. I placed it gently on the porch step. Then I turned around, walked back to my car, and left. No threats, no apologies, just boundaries made real. In my rearview mirror, I saw Zinnia crying, Clive pacing and cursing into his phone. Marjorie didn't move. She looked frozen, not with anger, but recognition. It wasn't shock. It was the moment someone finally sees the cost of what they've been handed for free. I didn't change the locks to be cruel. I changed them because I finally realized the door was never mine to walk through, only to keep open. Monday at noon, I stood across the street from what used to be my family's house. The sun had finally burned through the morning clouds, painting the porch with an uncomfortable warmth. A young couple parked in the driveway, trunk open, boxes in their arms. A toddler bounced around their ankles, giggling as a golden retriever tried to grab a plush toy from his hand. It was a picture-perfect scene, the kind realtors dream of and families post on moving day. I should have felt something sharp. I didn't. Just a quiet release, like watching someone else finally inherit the burden you carried for too long. New lives moved in with fresh paint. My family was still tangled in the wallpaper. My phone buzzed. A message from the real estate agent. Transfer complete. Keys received. Congrats, Brenna. I didn't type back. I just slid the phone into my coat pocket and leaned against my car, watching the couple disappear inside. The night before, I'd driven by the house just once more, lights still on, boxes half-packed near the window. I hadn't intended to stop, but Clive had been outside, tossing old tools into the back of his truck. He looked up when he saw me and walked over, jaw tight, eyes sharp. "This isn't what family does," he said, voice low. "No," I replied. "Family doesn't steal your name, your credit, your dignity. What you mean is control." He started to argue, but Marjorie had come out from behind the garage, her face drawn. "She's right, Clive," she said, her voice surprisingly clear. "We used her." He didn't speak after that, just walked back to the truck, his silence finally heavier than mine. That moment didn't bring me peace, but it brought me confirmation. Sometimes acknowledgement is all you get. Sunday, before I left the house for good, I parked out front one last time. Zinnia was inside, dragging boxes without direction. Marjorie sat on the front step, eyes unfocused, like she wasn't packing up a home, but watching something sink. I didn't walk in. This wasn't revenge. This was removal. Still, I allowed myself one step inside, just to breathe the space once more. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and worn memories. I paused in the entryway. There, on the wall beside the coat closet, hung the framed family photo from Christmas 8 years ago. I remembered that day. I wore a green sweater and stood on the far right, next to the tree. Zinnia was front and center, Clive and Marjorie close behind. Inez had been in it too, before Zinnia cropped the photo to post it online. In the frame that hung now, my shoulder was missing. Even in pictures, I had always been edited out. This time, I gave them the full crop. I turned, walked back outside, and didn't look back. I left the house key beneath the ceramic frog planter by the front step, texted the new owners. "All clear, wishing you laughter." The drive home was long but quiet. Somewhere along the back roads, I pressed play on an old voicemail from Inez. She had left it during one of the family's colder winters. "Baby," she said, "you don't need to fight to be seen. You just need to walk into places that already have light." That night, I made tea and sat in my kitchen, the one I paid for, in the house I had filled myself. I thought about everything I had done, and everything I had stopped doing. I didn't regret the locks, the documents, or the silence. What I regretted was how long it took me to believe I was allowed to protect myself. The worst part of being erased isn't that they forget you. It's that they expect you to thank them for the effort. The next morning passed uneventfully, until it didn't. By 10:12 a.m., I was sipping coffee on my porch in Portland, sorting through junk mail, when my phone rang. The screen lit up. "Mom." I stared at the name, thumb hovering. I hadn't heard her voice since the locks changed and the porch emptied. I should have let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. "Hi," I said flatly. Marjorie's voice was barely above a whisper, soft and shaky, like she'd rehearsed sorrow in the mirror. We need to talk," she said. "It's not what you think." I didn't respond. She took that as an invitation. "Zinnia's been crying," she added, a tremble carefully placed for effect. "She wanted to get you something from Hawaii. It was supposed to be a surprise." A surprise, paid for with my credit, in my name. "With which money?" I asked quietly. There was silence on the line. Then came the soft chuckle, one I'd heard all my life when they wanted to wave discomfort away. "You always take things too seriously, Brenna." I closed my eyes for a breath. "Not anymore." I ended the call before she could spin the guilt wheel any further. That afternoon, I walked into Alaric's office for the final paperwork. His assistant greeted me with a knowing smile. "He's got it ready for you." Inside, Alaric handed me the stack of documents: the real estate transfer, the final deed, and the legal confirmation of sale. No gray areas, no family clause, no footnote for forgiveness. He pointed to one line. "Sole owner, Brenna Wilson." "This protects you," he said. "No contest, no clawback. What you've done is clean. And final." I nodded. The air in my chest expanded in a way it hadn't for months. I left the office lighter, not because the burden was gone, but because I had finally set it down. By sunset, the ripple effects arrived. Marjorie texted, short and shaky. "We didn't realize what you were really holding up." Clive's voicemail was sharp-edged. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own parents." Zinnia's email came next, subject line: "Urgent." A screenshot of her rejected car loan application. Her message below: "Thanks a lot, sis." I archived each one, not out of spite, just as evidence. They thought love meant silence. I redefined it. Love now means limits. That evening, I brewed a pot of tea and sat on my porch with the real estate folder beside me. The house behind me was quiet. No footsteps stomping through shared rooms. No voice from a parent reminding me what I should have done. I opened a fresh journal page and wrote, "I protected my peace. That's not betrayal. That's inheritance." I thought silence would feel like exile, but it felt like air. Thursday came with no drama, no storm clouds, just a phone call I didn't expect, but probably should have. I was folding towels when the screen lit up. "Grandma Inez." I answered with a soft, "Hi." Her voice, low and steady as always, cut through like a warm knife. "They're staying here for now," she said. "Clive's folding napkins like a nervous trainee. Zinnia's not late, for once." I didn't say anything, just let the image sit. My father, whose hands had only known control, now fumbling with linens under fluorescent lights. My sister, who never met a clock she respected, showing up early for something. Then, Inez added, "They still talk like they're the ones who were betrayed." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "That sounds about right," I murmured. "You know," she said after a pause, "I told you a long time ago, don't confuse endurance with loyalty. Some chains were never meant to be worn." I smiled at the memory. I'd been 16, crying in her kitchen after yet another family holiday that left me invisible. She continued, "I'm proud of you, not because you fought, because you finally walked away with your name still yours." I didn't cry. Not then. But something quiet shifted inside me. Later that night, I sat on my couch with a journal open on my lap, pen resting on the page. I hadn't written anything yet, just stared at the white space, letting the stillness hold me. Healing isn't loud, it's the absence of alarms. That thought settled into my chest, heavy in a different way than grief or anger. It was the weight of peace. The next afternoon, I went to the market to pick up a few things. Nothing special, just groceries for the weekend. As I stood in the checkout line, I overheard a woman behind me talking to her friend. "I paid the rent," she said, her tone tired. She took the credit, but I let her. Because that's what you do for family, right? I didn't turn around, didn't nod or offer a knowing glance. I just stood still, absorbing it. I used to think dignity was earned, but sometimes it's just reclaimed. When I got home, there was a postcard waiting in my mailbox. No envelope, no return address. On the front was a watercolor of sunflowers in a field. On the back, in handwriting, I recognized immediately, it read, "Thinking of you. Mom." No apology, no ownership, just the echo of presence without substance. I didn't throw it away. I didn't reply either. I slid it into the drawer with my legal papers, next to the receipts and the contracts, where it belonged. A piece of the puzzle, not a peace offering. That evening, I made tea and pulled Inez's old notebook from the shelf. I hadn't opened it since before the sale closed. I flipped through the pages, her handwriting steady and elegant, notes about herbs, stories about her childhood, and occasional quotes she'd copied down from books or sermons. One line caught my eye, underlined twice in dark blue ink. People don't always mean to hurt you, but if they do it repeatedly, intention becomes irrelevant. I traced the words with my finger. I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I had already closed the door and locked it from my side. 6 months later, I found myself walking through an old part of the neighborhood on a quiet Saturday morning. The breeze was light, and someone nearby was mowing a lawn. I didn't plan to go by the house, but my feet did what they wanted. I slowed as I passed. There it was, my former home. But now it looked nothing like the one I remembered. The shutters had been painted a soft blue. There were sunflowers blooming in the front beds, a red tricycle tipped near the walkway, and a golden retriever wagging its tail at the fence. A little boy squealed with delight from the porch, his parents laughing behind him. I didn't stop. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. I didn't sell the house out of revenge. I sold it so I could stop living inside someone else's story. That night, back in my apartment, I turned off all the lights except the one over my desk. The room was quiet. My kind of quiet now. No overhead fans humming, no footsteps above me. Just me, a cup of peppermint tea, and a folder I hadn't opened since the sale. I opened my laptop and created a private channel. Then I clicked upload. The file was simple. A 3-minute video slideshow. No music, no voiceover. Just photos, screenshots, emails, bank receipts, copies of texts, snippets of contracts. At the end of the clip, a single line appeared on screen. They took everything I gave, so I took back what was mine. I didn't post it, I didn't share it, but I saved it. Not for them, for me. For record. For the version of myself who once needed to prove she was telling the truth. On Monday, I taught a workshop at the community center. The topic? Financial boundaries, when love becomes leverage. There were 8 women in the room, all older than me, all nodding in painful recognition as I spoke. I didn't need applause. I just needed to make sure no one like me walked that road blind again. Through acquaintances, I sometimes heard what they were up to. Clive, it turned out, had started going to a local support group. Not just sitting in silence, but talking. About control, about pride. Zinnia had picked up part-time shifts at a wellness shop, organic soaps, yoga mats, quiet hours. Marjorie had joined a women's group at a church, volunteered on Sundays. None of them reached out. None of them said, "I'm sorry." I received a letter one day, no return address, just my name and street handwritten in cursive I knew too well. I didn't open it. I placed it in a shoebox beside a few keepsakes I kept in the back of the closet. The deed to my home, the printout of the first bank account I opened alone, and a yellow sticky note that said, in my own handwriting, "No one can erase a name you own." That night, I sat on my porch as the sun dipped past the horizon. I pulled out my phone and recorded a short voice memo, just for me. Forgiveness isn't the door, it's the sidewalk. It doesn't take you back, it takes you past. I saved the file, then tucked the phone away and closed my eyes. This wasn't a happy ending. It was a quiet one. And that's what I always wanted. Quiet that stayed.